A soft shimmer of light pierced the edges of the tall hospital windows, illuminating long hallways that smelled faintly of antiseptic. Tong Xiaoran, a young woman with a poised bearing and a quiet, observant gaze, sat on the edge of a bed in a psychiatric ward. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared down at a collection of photographs, each featuring a different man. The rustle of a doctor's coat alerted her to the presence of Dr. Tang, who approached carefully, a sense of urgency in his voice. Dr. Tang, murmuring,
Xiaoran, you're fully awake now. This means your second personality has finally disappeared.
Xiaoran exhaled as if releasing something heavy. She pressed her fingers against her temples and tried to recall the lost pieces of her memory. Months of blankness were drifting past her mind's eye, like half-remembered dreams that had dissolved into the morning sun. Tong Xiaoran, voice trembling.
So she's gone? The second personality that took over for 3 months? It's really over?
Dr. Tang nodding gently.
Yes, you can safely wake up now. Based on my evaluation, that secondary personality has vanished. It won't trouble you anymore.
Despite the doctor's reassuring words, Xiaoran's face twisted with mingled relief and uncertainty. She took another look at the scattered photos near her, each featuring a different man. She couldn't help but notice that they were all numbered. No .1 comma, no .2 comma, number 3. It went on and on. She blinked rapidly, feeling her heart pound in her chest. Tong Xiaoran, speaking softly to herself.
These men. My second personality. She must have provoked all of them. How could she have done so much in only 3 months? I don't even know who they are.
Dr. Tang sighing.
Your other self left quite a surprise for you, Xiaoran. Possibly a very large, dangerous surprise.
Xiaoran gingerly tucked the photos into a folder that Dr. Tang handed over. Outside her door, a man's urgent voice rose in exclamation. She recognized the tense tone. It was Mr. Song's assistant, trying to figure out how she got here. She realized that some time had passed since she was first admitted, and there were likely others waiting for her to resurface. Dr. Tang, glancing at the door.
You might want to be cautious. Some of these men might be harboring grudges. If your second personality, well, if she truly acted on her impulses, you might be left picking up the pieces.
Tong Xiaoran, bowing politely.
Thank you, Dr. Tang. I appreciate the concern, but I'll be careful.
She left the ward with the file in hand, slipping into a narrow corridor where she was greeted by an unexpected scene. Standing beside a sleek black luxury car was Han Bin, an old flame from her past, though in truth she barely remembered him. At his side was Shuangyang, a woman who had once tried to start all manner of drama with Xiaoran. Shuangyang, sneering.
Tong Xiaoran, fresh out of the mental hospital, I see. Are you still going to act high and mighty? Don't forget, you lost Han Bin to me.
Xiaoran narrowed her eyes, refusing to dignify Shuangyang's provocation with much reaction. She noticed that Shuangyang was eyeing a new sports car parked behind Xiaoran. Shuangyang, mocking laughter.
What is that? $1 million car? As if you could afford it.
Tong Xiaoran, calmly.
The black car you're so eager to scratch isn't mine. Mine's the one behind it.
Shuangyang's face twisted with disbelief, and before she could hurl more insults, the tension rose to a fever pitch. A group of men, friends of Han Bin, arrived, looking ready to fight. In the span of moments, harsh words turned into violence. Shuangyang ranted about how she was going to teach Xiaoran a lesson, to the point of threatening harm. But Xiaoran, coolly and unflinchingly, stared them down. Suddenly, a third party intervened. Song Shimo, the formidable oldest son of the illustrious Song family, stepped from a separate luxury car. His mere presence silenced the men who had circled in. Song Shimo, in a deadly, cool tone.
Who dares to hurt Xiaoran? I'll make sure you regret it.
Han Bin, apparently lacking caution, barked back, demanding that Song Shimo stand aside. In a flash of swift movements, Song Shimo's men subdued Han Bin and his allies. Shuangyang, once so brazen, realized the severity of the situation and cowered. Song Shimo, gesturing to Xiaoran.
Come here, Xiaodan. Don't stand near this trash.
Caught between confusion and anxiety, Xiaoran hesitated. She knew Song Shimo only from fragmented memories. He was yet another man from those mysterious 3 months. Despite her wariness, she inched closer to him, if only to avoid the immediate danger that Han Bin posed. Han Bin, voice trembling.
What's going on? Song Shimo, you call her your girlfriend?
Song Shimo, smirking coldly.
She's my woman. Touch her and you're finished.
That statement alone was enough to shut Han Bin up, but it also ignited a storm of questions in Xiaoran's mind. She glanced around, mystified at how one day in a mental hospital had changed her world so drastically. Now, a multitude of men seemed to appear out of nowhere, some brandishing the label boyfriend, others acting as though they had been slighted or jilted. Not far from them, another presence emerged, Song Daning, the second young master of the Song family. He, too, stood with unwavering determination in his eyes. Song Daning, urgently,
Xiaoran, don't get too close to my brother. Come with me.
His tone was protective, almost possessive, as though he had known Xiaoran for years. Confusion fluttered across her face. The dynamic between the two Song brothers was clearly volatile, like two tigers guarding the same territory. One of them calmly stared at the other with an unreadable gaze. The other had burning intensity in his eyes. Before Xiaoran could respond, a shocking announcement burst from behind them. Dr. Lian, a prominent physician who had apparently also been caught up in Xiaoran's orbit these last few months, slid into the conversation. Dr. Lian, in a steady but serious tone.
Xiaoran is pregnant.
A chilling hush overtook them. Xiaoran's eyes flickered wide. Pregnant. She had no recollection of how or when. The men around her seemed to hold their breath, each stunned by the pronouncement. Song Shimo, whispering in amazement.
She's pregnant?
Song Daning, swallowing nervously.
That child could be mine.
Dr. Lean.
We can do a paternity test right now if you like. It will take about a day for results to come in.
Amid that swirl of tension, Xiaoran felt her knees buckle. The entire world seemed unreal. Half a day ago, she believed her biggest worry was how to return to a normal life after her second personality vanished. Now, she was pregnant, and not only one, but multiple men were claiming her. 108 men, if the photostack was to be believed. That evening, Xiaoran found temporary refuge in a modest apartment. She needed space, far from the maddening crowd. She was leaning against a small sofa, eyes trained on the collection of photographs and the cryptic notes her second personality had left behind. Faint car lights flooded through the window, and she didn't notice at first when someone knocked gently on the door. Tong Xiaoran calling out,
Who is it?
Song Daning muffled through the door.
It's me. Please open the door.
Cautiously, Xiaoran opened it a crack and discovered Song Daning standing there, looking disheveled and anxious. Before she could say anything, he slipped inside. Song Daning hastily.
I came to make sure you're all right. After that big scene earlier, I was worried.
He glanced over her shoulder and noticed the pictures scattered on the coffee table. Unnumbered men stared back from the photos, illusions of a life he barely understood. Song Daning, voice trembling.
Do you remember me at all? Please, don't you remember the time we spent?
But Xiaoran pressed her lips together and shook her head. Tong Xiaoran.
I only have fragments. My second personality has done so many things I can't account for.
Song Daning, pain flickering in his eyes.
You truly don't remember how we had fun together. You talked to me about living life on our own terms, about freedom. And
He cut himself off, the realization dawning that those memories weren't with this Xiaoran. They were with the impulsive, brazen woman who had hijacked her body for 3 months. Despite how upset he was, there was tenderness behind his eyes that suggested he wasn't going to abandon her. Song Daning.
If the child is mine, promise me you'll let me take care of you. You know my mother can be ruthless, but I won't let anything happen to you.
Tong Xiaoran, murmuring.
I don't want any part of these family struggles. I just want to figure out who the father is, then see if that person wants to be in the child's life.
He stiffened, feeling cornered by her calmly stated intentions. So many unspoken questions choked his throat as he pleaded with her, but he recognized the exhaustion in her eyes and decided not to press further. With an awkward nod, Song Danning departed, leaving the apartment in hushed silence. The next day, Xiaoran found herself back at the hospital for the paternity test. Her thoughts ran wild, grappling with the idea that the child might belong to Song Danning, Song Shimo, or even Dr. Lian. Each one had apparently shared some kind of entanglement with her second personality. She entered a quiet waiting room where Dr. Lian stood with a clipboard. Dr. Lian, warmly,
Don't worry, Xiaoran. This will be quick. We'll collect samples and the results should be in tomorrow.
he escorted her into a small lab space where the technician carefully sealed vials of blood. Soon, Song Shimo arrived wearing the crisp suit of a powerful CEO, followed by Song Danning in equally fine attire but with a more youthful edge. Song Danning clearing his throat.
Let's be sure we do everything properly, no tampering.
Song Shimo, icily ignoring his brother.
I have full faith in the top experts on staff. After all, the Song family invests a great deal here.
A standoff brewed between them as Dr. Lian tried to remain neutral. After the samples were taken, the men parted ways without so much as a handshake. Xiaoran, unsettled by their tension, lingered behind to receive instructions from Dr. Lian about prenatal care. When she finally emerged from the corridor, she discovered a man in a hood obstructing her path. Something about his stance gave her chills. Hooded man, harsh whisper.
You'd better disappear from the city, or else I can't guarantee your life remains peaceful.
She froze, her heart hammering. Just as quickly, Song Shimo reappeared, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. The hooded man instantly fled. Song Shimo, quiet but furious.
Was he threatening you? Did my father send him, or my stepmother?
Xiaoran, still shaken, managed a stiff nod. Tong Xiaoran.
It's fine now. He's gone.
Song Shimo, voice lowered.
It's not fine. I'll get to the bottom of this.
He slipped a protective arm around her shoulder to usher her out of the building, ignoring the startled looks of passers-by. Despite her insistence on being left alone, Xiaoran found herself whisked away to a private estate belonging to the Song family, a sprawling mansion with marble floors and gilded ceilings. She had no say in the matter. Apparently, Song Shimo's father, Mr. Song Sr., demanded a meeting. Tension knotted every breath she took. In the grand foyer, she encountered Song Shimo's stepmother, elegantly dressed but with a cruel glint in her eye. The woman made no attempt to hide her disapproval. Stepmother, eyeing Xiaoran coldly.
So you're the one who has my stepson in such a stir. Let's be frank, you're hardly fit for him.
Song Shimo's father appeared moments later, though he was clearly unwell, one hand clutching his chest as though in pain. Racked by worry, Song Shimo hovered close. Mr. Song Sr., wheezing.
I won't allow this. She's trifling, not worthy of the Song name. It's final.
Song Shimo, voice taut with anger.
Father, I'm in charge of my own affairs. If you dare harm Xiaoran again...
The older man glared, then erupted in a coughing fit. Servants rushed to support him, leading him to an ornate sitting room. The stepmother followed anxiously, occasionally throwing hostile glances in Xiaoran's direction. Realizing how easily her life could be in danger around these powerful, calculating people, Xiaoran stepped away from the main parlor and began to retreat. She didn't want to watch father and son quarrel any longer. She found herself in the corner of a sunlit hallway, her breath shallow, adrenaline still coursing through her system. Then a gentle voice spoke from behind. Song Danning.
I'm sorry. I never wanted you to see all of this. Please don't be frightened.
She turned to see him wearing an expression of sincere regret. Without warning, a clamor broke out in the parlor. Song Shimo and his father's argument escalated. Someone had accused Xiaoran of having more than 100 lovers. Voices flared, calling her a liar and a gold digger. Incensed, Song Daning stormed into the fray, only to lock eyes with Song Shimo. Mrs. Song, the stepmother, stood off to the side, a smug satisfaction crossing her features. Stepmother.
Both of you, you see, this woman has 108 men on her hook. You want to keep her? Ha, she's tainted. She's not worth the Song family's reputation.
Song Shimo, icily.
I don't care who she's been with. I said I'm taking responsibility for the child. If it's not mine, I'll raise it as my own.
Song Daning, fist clenched.
No, if the child's mine, we're leaving. I'll take care of her, away from this family chaos.
Xiaoran's heart thumped with mounting dread. The revelations about her second personality and the swirling tensions of the Song family bound her in a net of obligations she never asked for. In a matter of days, the paternity test results from the hospital were finally delivered. The Song family assembled once again in a small, ornate library filled with old books, crystal chandeliers overhead. There, Dr. Lien carefully opened an envelope as all eyes fastened on him. Dr. Lien, reading quietly,
The father of Miss Tong Xiaoran's unborn child is...
A wave of gasps then fell into silence as he read the name. Unexpectedly, the results stated that neither Song Shimo nor Song Daning was the father. Confusion and shock lined everyone's faces. Song Daning, voice quavering,
That's impossible. We were together. I know we... How could it be?
Song Shimo, frowning deeply.
It's obviously incorrect. There must be tampering.
Tensions flared anew. The stepmother looked momentarily triumphant, but tried to hide it. Mr. Song Sr. coughed, quite obviously trying to suppress a smirk. Xiaoran felt her mind spinning. Could it be Dr. Lien? Or was there someone else among the 108 men? The surge of anxiety seized her, and she nearly fainted. At once, Dr. Lien was by her side. Dr. Lien, softly,
Xiaoran, hold on. Breathe. I'll help you.
but Song Shimo snapped forward, Song Shimo growling.
Don't you touch her!
He insisted on whisking Xiaoran away, refusing to let Dr. Lien see to her. The stepmother, seeing an opportunity, began whispering instructions to her staff, her eyes glinting with malicious purpose. Stepmother, quietly to a servant.
Take her away, or make sure she won't cause further disgrace.
That whisper, though subtle, didn't escape Dr. Lien's attentive ears. He recognized the threat and filed away the information. Meanwhile, Song Daning stood trembling with frustration, tears pricking his eyes at the incomprehensible test result. Song Daning, barely audible.
No, it has to be me, or my brother. It can't be anyone else.
Mrs. Song stepped forward, her posture rigid, that commanding coldness returning to her face. Stepmother.
You all heard the results. This child is none of yours. It's best if you men bury your fantasies and let her fend for herself. No more humiliating the Song family.
She turned on her heel, heading for the grand staircase. Mr. Song Sr. cast a final glare in Xiaoran's direction before calling servants to help him out of the library. In the ensuing hours, Dr. Lien discreetly did his own investigation. He contacted the lab and discovered that someone had indeed tampered with the paternity test. Meanwhile, Song Shimo tightened security around Xiaoran, forbidding her from leaving his sight whenever possible. Yet, even under protection, misfortune struck swiftly. One evening, as Xiaoran sat in the back seat of a sleek car with tinted windows, a van screeched across their path. Armed men in dark clothing yanked her from the vehicle and subdued Song Shimo's driver. In a frantic struggle, Xiaoran was dragged into an abandoned warehouse at the edge of the city. Bound and terrified, she wondered if this was where her life would end. Yet the kidnappers weren't typical criminals. Their instructions were clear: eliminate her if she posed any resistance. When the door crashed open once again, Xiaoran's heart hammered with dread, expecting more threats. Instead, she saw Song Shimo, blood trickling from a wound on his arm, brandishing a gun at the lead kidnapper. Song Shimo, roaring,
Let her go, or I'll kill every last one of you.
The men tried to fight back, but Song Shimo moved with practiced agility. Nonetheless, he was outnumbered and soon found himself pinned down. Xiaoran screamed in horror as she saw a knife angled toward his chest. All at once, Dr. Lian burst onto the scene with a small group of security personnel. The rescue was swift. The kidnappers, faced with unexpected reinforcements, scattered into the shadows. In the scramble, both Song Shimo and Dr. Lian took hits, each protecting Xiaoran with their own bodies. Gasping for breath, Xiaoran collapsed to her knees, her hands pressed to her belly to protect her unborn child. Tong Xiaoran, voice shaking.
Are you two all right?
Song Shimo, gritting his teeth in pain.
I'll live. Let's get out of here.
Dr. Lian limped over, scanning for any serious wounds. Relief flooded him when he saw Xiaoran was, for the most part, unharmed. Dr. Lian labored breathing.
We need to get you to a hospital. Shimo, you're bleeding heavily.
Song Shimo, expression set with determination.
Not until I know she's safe.
He refused to leave her side, even as blood seeped through his shirt. That was the moment Xiaoran realized how fiercely protective Song Shimo could be, and how real his feelings might be. Finally, they made it to a hospital in the dead of night. The doctors there quickly whisked Song Shimo into surgery. Dr. Lian, though injured himself, insisted on personally checking Xiaoran's vitals to confirm that neither she nor the baby were harmed. Dr. Lian, softly, while bandaging her arm.
Whoever's behind this is serious about removing you as a threat. This is no ordinary vendetta. It has to do with the Song family's power struggle.
Tong Xiaoran, her eyes watering.
I never asked for this. All I want is to figure out who fathered this child, and to give my baby a chance at life. Why is everything so complicated?
Dr. Lian continued to treat her in silence, lost in his own swirl of thoughts. Their gazes met, and Xiaoran sensed an unspoken understanding. He, too, might still be a candidate for fatherhood once the true test results came back. Soon, Song Daning arrived at the hospital. He was distraught over his older brother's injuries, yet still locked onto Xiaoran with an intense fervor.
Where is he? Is my brother dying? Xiaoran, talk to me.
He'll pull through. He took a serious wound, but he made sure I was safe.
A swirl of guilt and heartbreak showed on Downing's face. He pressed his palm to his forehead and murmured that if they had never fought over Xiaoran, maybe his brother wouldn't have been harmed. But she had no words to comfort him. Some wounds, after all, ran deeper than the ones on the surface of the skin. Dawn broke with the hospital corridors filled with hushed footsteps. The press had somehow caught wind of a possible Song family scandal, and bodyguards lined the entrance, turning away any reporters. Amid the tension, Xiaoran sat in a lounge area, holding a paper cup of herbal tea. Tong Xiaoran, thinking aloud.
So many lives have been disturbed, all because of me.
Yet part of her recognized it wasn't truly her. It was the second personality who had fanned the flames of so much chaos. Now she was caught in a chain of repercussions, battered between these powerful men. Song Shimo, the resourceful and protective elder brother. Song Daning, the impulsive younger brother who claimed she changed his view of life. Dr. Lian, who had saved her more than once. As she sipped the tea, a quiet figure approached. She looked up to see Song Shimo, pale but upright, leaning on the doorframe with a bandaged shoulder.
I'm sorry I frightened you.
Shouldn't you be resting? You nearly died.
I can't rest until I'm sure you're all right.
A hush fell between them. Xiaoran's eyes misted with unspoken gratitude. Outside, Song Daning was making phone calls, trying to arrange further protection. Despite the turmoil, a sense of unity was forming, for the sake of the unborn child, if nothing else.
Thank you for saving me again and again. I don't know how to repay that.
You don't have to. Just don't leave me.
His final words lingered in the sterile hospital air, and though she remained uncertain, Xiaoran did feel a flicker of trust. Perhaps, she thought, it was the start of some fragile alliance. a vow to keep her and the baby safe while she solved the mystery of who fathered it. Little did she know, the darkest threats still lurked beyond the hospital doors, and the labyrinth of the Song family's battles was only beginning. Weak morning sunlight spilled across the private hospital suite like a thin veil of gold, illuminating the tension within. The night's chaos, gunfire, kidnappings, shadows slipping in and out of corridors, had left Tong Xiaoran shaken. Her hand rested atop her small yet growing belly, even as her mind churned with worry. The men at the center of her predicament, Song Shimo, Song Dunning, and Dr. Lian, were all embroiled in bitter resentments, betrayals, and unresolved questions. She glanced up from her seat in the hospital lounge to see Song Shimo enter. Pale from his wound, shoulders tense with unspoken rage, he still managed a reassuring nod in her direction.
How are you feeling, Xiaoran?
A little shaken, but I'm all right. What about you?
I've been better. Don't worry about me. Nothing can keep me down for long.
He eased himself into a nearby chair, wincing. Though the doctors had insisted on rest, his determination to stay close to Xiaoran overrode that advice. Sensing he needed to conserve his strength, Xiaoran shifted her focus to the hallway, half expecting an ambush of reporters or another Song family confrontation. A few minutes later, Dr. Lien stepped in. He wore a crisp white coat but moved with a noticeable limp, his own injury from the rescue still healing. His sharp eyes flicked between Xiaoran and Song Shimo, as though assessing their conditions both medical and emotional.
I need to follow up on Xiaoran's vitals and the baby's health. After the stress you've gone through, it's important we monitor you closely.
Yes, please. The baby's all that matters now.
I'll be here if you need anything.
Dr. Lean motioned for her to join him in a smaller exam room off to the side. Once inside, the door clicked shut, and he gestured for her to lie down on a cushioned table. Dr. Lean, checking her pulse.
Your blood pressure is a bit elevated, but that's not surprising under these circumstances. Breathe deeply.
Everything feels so surreal, Doctor. My second personality caused chaos with so many men. Now I'm in constant danger because of it.
You're not responsible for what that other personality did. All we can do is move forward. Protect you and your baby. The child's father must be identified correctly, but more important is keeping you safe.
He let her sit up and began jotting notes onto a tablet.
I've been checking into the Tampered paternity test. Someone manipulated it from inside the lab. The official documents in your file right now are false.
Do you know who?
Not yet, but I suspect it's someone in the Song family, possibly to sow confusion and push you out. We'll need to do another test, discreetly, at a lab far outside their sphere of influence.
I appreciate that. I just want the truth, so this child can be born without a web of lies.
Dr. Lean placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, then led her back to the corridor. When they emerged, Song Daning stood there, shoulders sagging and eyes weighted with gloom. He had returned from an argument with his mother, the ever-scheming Mrs. Song, who lurked somewhere in the hospital, no doubt plotting her next move. Song Daning, voice subdued.
Xiaoran,
He paused, noticing Dr. Lean's presence and the watchful gaze of Song Shimo from across the hallway.
Can we talk somewhere in private?
Dr. Lean took this as his cue to exit, bowing politely to Xiaoran and stepping away to give them a moment. Song Shimo, not quite ready to leave them alone, hovered a short distance away, close enough to intervene if something went wrong, yet far enough to grant them a semblance of privacy.
All right, but please, no fighting.
They found an unoccupied corner by a vending machine. Song Daning drew in a deep breath, raking his hand through his hair as he spoke. Song Daning, speaking softly. I'm sorry for everything you've been through. My mother keeps insisting you're undeserving. But she doesn't know you like I do. I'm convinced the baby is mine, but not because I only want an heir. I want... He trailed off, eyes stormy with regrets.
Daning, you keep clinging to the idea that I'm the same woman you knew, but I'm not. The person you grew attached to was my second personality.
Maybe so, but You share the same face, the same voice. Even if your personalities differ, you're still Tong Xiaoran. I can't just ignore that.
Xiaoran sighed, realizing how deeply he was struggling. During those 3 months, her body had done things she could hardly imagine. For someone like Donning, who had found a spark of connection, it felt like a cruel trick of fate.
I understand your pain, but the danger around us is real. Until we find the child's father for sure, I can't make promises. And you shouldn't keep chasing ghosts.
A flicker of hurt crossed his face, but he nodded, turning to go. Over his shoulder, he added in a hushed tone,
If anything changes, if you remember even one moment from those 3 months, I hope you'll tell me.
Before she could respond, he retreated. Later that afternoon, a hush fell over the hospital's highest floor. Protective guards hired by Song Shimo stationed themselves like statues near each corridor. Rumors circled that Mrs. Song, Daning's mother, had arrived, an imposing figure with impeccable posture and cold eyes that belied her cunning. She glided into the lounge, flanked by 2 bodyguards. Song Shimo and Xiaoran had just stepped out of the elevator when they spotted her. Mrs. Song, voice taut.
Shimo, we need to talk.
Song Shimo, steadying himself.
We have nothing to discuss unless it's about you ceasing attempts on Xiaoran's life.
Mrs. Song, arching a brow.
Bold accusation indeed. You think I'd risk scandal by harming a woman who might or might not be carrying a song heir?
Her expression was so measured it could have been carved from marble. Still, Xiaoran felt a prickle of fear under that icy gaze. Mrs. Song stepped closer, ignoring Xiaoran entirely. Mrs. Song, to Song Shimo.
Your father wants to see you, and Daning too. It's urgent. I advise you not to keep him waiting.
Song Shimo, growling softly.
Then let him come to me. I'm not leaving Xiaoran alone. Not after everything your hired henchman pulled.
Mrs. Song, eyes flashing.
You dare accuse me? Again without proof?
In the uneasy silence, Xiaoran steadied her breathing. She realized that if the older woman truly wanted her gone, she was cunning enough to mask her involvement. Tong Xiaoran, quietly stepping forward.
If your husband wants to see Shimo, then I'll stay behind. There's no reason for him to worry about me.
Song Shimo, turning anxiously.
Xiaoran!
Mrs. Song, cutting him off.
Such a reasonable suggestion. Perhaps I misjudged you. Guard her well, if you wish, but be quick about it.
With that, Mrs. Song pivoted and swept out, her bodyguards trailing. Song Shimo, clenching his fists once she left.
This is a ploy, a cornered snake. She's out for blood.
Tong Xiaoran, laying a hand on his arm.
I'll be fine, Shimo. Dr. Lean is still around, and so are all the guards. Go find out what your father wants. We can't live in fear forever.
He hesitated, anguish flickering across his features, but after a moment he nodded and left with one of his most trusted associates. Not half an hour later, Xiaoran's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, an unknown number. Given her precarious situation, curiosity overcame caution. Mystery caller, male voice, muffled.
Miss Tong, we have urgent information about the paternity test. If you want to know the truth, come to the ground floor entrance alone.
Her pulse hammered. Could this be Dr. Lean's contact from outside the Song family's influence? She had to know. Gathering what courage she could, she slipped away from her security detail, using the hospital's back stairwell. The ground floor entrance was quieter than usual. She walked carefully toward a set of glass doors. No sign of the caller. For a moment, she thought it might have been a hoax call, until a shape darted out of a nearby corridor. A cloth pressed over her nose and mouth. The world spun, her vision blurred. Tong Xiaoran, struggling to speak.
Stop! Help!
Darkness overtook her senses, and she collapsed in her captor's arms. When Xiaoran awakened, her mind swam in confusion. She was no longer in the hospital. Her wrists were bound, but whoever had taken her had placed her in a dimly lit bedroom rather than a grimy warehouse. The windows were locked from the outside, the glass tinted so she couldn't see out. She swallowed hard, conscious of her unborn child more than ever. A faint click announced someone entering. She saw a tall silhouette, a man in a tailored suit, face obscured by the shadows. Unknown man, voice low.
Apologies for the rough approach, Miss Tong. I had no choice.
Tong Xiaoran, heart pounding.
Who are you? Why did you... Is this Mrs. Song's doing?
You'll learn soon, but first, let's talk about that child you're carrying.
She pulled her knees to her chest protectively, trembling.
Why does everyone want this child so badly? I just want to live normally.
It's not just the child. It's about the future of the Song Empire. The father's identity changes everything.
He stepped a little closer, and a moment of moonlight from the window faintly illuminated his features. A calculating smirk, an unmistakable resemblance to Mr. Song Sr. Could he be a cousin, or an illegitimate son? The possibilities swarmed in Xiaoran's mind. Tong Xiaoran, fighting to keep composure.
If you're part of their family, then you know the child's father is either Song Shimo, Song Daning, or Dr. Lin. So why not let them handle it?
Unknown man, laughing quietly.
I'm afraid Dr. Lin is a mere outsider, despite her skill, and as for the Song brothers...
He paused as though savoring the words.
If the father is Shimo, he'll fortify his position as the rightful heir. If it's Daning, it complicates the inheritance lines, and that's not advantageous for certain players in the family. My job is to ensure the father is Daning and Shimo is ousted. But if none of that works out, well, you and your baby might become unnecessary.
A chill seized Xiaoran's spine. She'd already been kidnapped once. How many times would she narrowly escape? Tong Xiaoran in a steady voice despite fear.
I won't just lie down and let you or anyone else decide my fate.
You'll find your options limited, but I have no desire to harm you as long as you cooperate. Think carefully, Miss Tong.
With that, he turned, leaving her alone in the hush. The door clicked, and a key turned in the lock. Back in the hospital, panic erupted the moment Song Shimo realized Xiaoran was missing. The guards reported that she'd vanished down a stairwell. Dr. Lien discovered her phone discarded by the ground floor exit. Song Shimo, voice tight with rage.
I knew it. Someone seized the moment to grab her. Where is she?
Guard #1, bowing anxiously.
We have no footage, sir. The cameras were tampered with.
Song Daning rushing into the lobby.
My mother was talking to someone on the phone. Could it be one of her men, or even father's loyalists?
The tension between the two brothers momentarily dissolved, replaced by a shared fear for Xiaoran's safety. Song Shimo pressed a hand to his bandaged shoulder, ignoring the pain. Song Shimo, roaring at his staff.
Start searching every property associated with the Song family. Factories, villas, empty warehouses, everything.
Song Daning, glancing at him.
I'll make calls to outside contacts. If I find so much as a hint of someone holding Xiaoran, I'm going in, no matter who stands in my way.
Though their motivations differed, Shimo, out of steadfast protective love, Daning out of desperate longing, they converged on the same goal, rescuing Xiaoran and safeguarding the unborn child. Standing near them, Dr. Lien tried to remain calm, though his eyes blazed with frustration. Dr. Lien, to both brothers.
We must move quickly. If the culprit is trying to manipulate the paternity test again, Xiaoran could be in grave danger.
Song Shimo, meeting Daning's gaze.
We'll work together this time, no fighting until she's safe.
Daning simply nodded, intense emotion flickering in his eyes. Night draped itself over the city as the two Song brothers scoured every location they could think of. Black SUVs roared through deserted streets, each search turning up dead ends and cryptic hints. A caretaker who claimed to have seen a car speeding away, or a dock worker who believed he heard a woman's cries. Meanwhile, locked in that shadowy bedroom, Xiaoran weighed her limited options. She had checked her restraints for hours, but the captors had done their job well. She couldn't help a flare of hope when she remembered Dr. Lien's earlier vow. He would never stop trying to protect her. Song Shimo, too, wouldn't rest, nor would Daning. Suddenly, footsteps echoed outside her door. The lock turned, and the unnamed man reappeared, carrying a tray of food. He set it on a small table. Unknown man, with forced politeness.
Eat, you'll need strength. You're carrying a future heir after all.
That depends on which side you want me to lie for.
He chuckled darkly.
You're not naive. Good, because your statement will determine the father of your child, especially once we forge the next round of test results.
They'll never believe a tampered report again. Too much has happened.
Money buys silence. Fear enforces compliance. For the right price, experts can claim any result.
Xiaoran stared at him, eyes brimming with defiance.
I don't care how powerful you think you are. Song Shimo and Song Daning will never give up on me. They'll tear this place apart if they have to.
At that, the unknown man's face flickered with a flash of doubt, but it vanished quickly, replaced by calm cynicism.
We'll see. In the meantime, keep up your strength. You'll need to be convincing when the new test is performed.
He left the room again, locking it tight. Xiaoran glared at the tray. Fear gnawed at her, but so did a grim determination. She couldn't let this man or anyone else decide her child's fate. On the other side of town, Dr. Lien parked in front of a shuttered clinic near a deserted intersection. He'd finally received a tip from a trusted colleague about a suspicious consultation. Someone had inquired how to forge paternity results under Song family credentials. Stepping inside, he found the colleague waiting with a guarded expression. Colleague, hushed voice.
They paid me to remain silent, but you're an old friend, and I can't keep quiet knowing a pregnant woman's life is at stake.
Dr. Lien, bowing in gratitude.
Thank you. Tell me everything.
The colleague relayed the conversation. A man in an expensive suit had approached them with an offer, an obscene sum of money, to produce a credible paternity test naming Song Daning as the father. The conversation had ended with cryptic instructions to remain on standby. Dr. Lien, clenching his jaw.
This has to be the kidnapper, or at least his accomplice.
Colleague.
Yes, if you can find any clue in our security footage, though they tried to bribe me to erase it.
They hurried to the back office, scanning grainy video, a tall figure with a partial side profile. The camera date showed that the visit occurred hours before Xiaoran's disappearance. Dr. Lien, tapping the screen.
I need a copy of this, immediately.
Certainly. Careful, Doctor. Whoever's behind this, they won't hesitate to silence us if we interfere.
They can try, but I won't let them harm Xiaoran or her child.
Armed with this evidence, Dr. Lien rushed out, calling Song Shimo. Dr. Lien speaking into his phone.
Shimo, I have a lead. A partial face. I'll send it to you. Put your people on it.
Song Shimo, voice crackling through the line.
Good work, Doctor. Daning and I are already closing in on some suspicious properties. Send me that footage.
With that, Dr. Lien jumped into his car, anxious to meet up with them. Time was running short, and he feared what the unknown man might do if cornered. Night deepened. Inside the locked room, Xiaoran hugged her belly, refusing to give in to despair. She thought of Song Shimo, how he'd saved her more than once, standing in the line of danger. She recalled Song Daning, earnest despite his troubles, longing to keep her safe. She also remembered Dr. Lien, calmly protective. All of them had done so much. She owed it to her unborn child and to her own sense of dignity to fight. Tong Xiaoran, under her breath.
Stay strong, baby. We'll both get out of this.
She tested the ropes on her wrists again. They weren't budging. Frustrated, she looked around for anything with a sharp edge, a shard of glass, a broken piece of furniture. The captor hadn't left any obvious weapons in the room. But near the bed, she noticed the corner of a wooden frame that was slightly splintered. Carefully maneuvering, she rubbed the rope against it. Little by little, she managed to fray one thread. It was an agonizingly slow process, but her heart pounded with a new sense of hope. Then, a sudden thump echoed in the hallway. Raised voices. She pressed her ear to the door. Guard's voice shouting,
Who are you? Step back!
A thunderous crash sounded like a door being kicked down. Instantly, Xiaoran's pulse skyrocketed. Was someone here to save her, or had a more dangerous faction arrived? She heard footsteps pounding, wood splintering. The door to her room was locked from the outside, but the commotion beyond it grew louder. A moment later, a gunshot rang out, then another. Her breath caught in her throat. Tong Xiaoran whispering in terror.
Please let it be them. Please be them.
Silence. Her heart hammered until her ears rang. Suddenly, the lock rattled. She stumbled backward, preparing for the worst, but the door flung open with a loud crash, revealing a figure half wreathed in dust. Song Shimo stepped inside, chest heaving, a gun still smoking lightly in his grip. Just behind him, Song Danning hovered, scanning the area in case more threats lurked. Song Shimo, eyes lighting up with relief.
Xiaoran.
Tong Xiaoran, voice trembling with overwhelming emotion.
Shimo, Daning.
They rushed to her. Shimo instantly holstered his weapon and knelt by her side, untying the ropes with brisk, precise movements. Daning stood guard, face set in grim determination, ensuring that no ambush could catch them off guard. Song Daning, urgently.
We have to move. Our men are holding back the rest of the guards. Let's get out now.
Xiaoran stumbled to her feet. She clutched Song Shimo's sleeve, tears of relief streaming down her cheeks. Tong Xiaoran, sobbing quietly.
Thank you. I thought I might.
Song Shimo, tightening his grip on her arm, reassuringly.
It's okay. We're here.
They guided her from the room. A short way down the corridor, the tall, unknown man lay unconscious on the floor, disarmed by Song Daning's skillful blow earlier. Two of Shimo's guards had pinned other henchmen, all groaning from the scuffle. Song Daning, voice low.
We need to leave before reinforcements arrive.
Song Shimo, nodding.
Agreed. Dr. Lin is waiting outside with the medical team. Xiaoran might be in shock.
They hurried through a side exit. The night air felt harsh against Xiaoran's tear-streaked face, but she breathed it in with gratitude. A black SUV was idling, headlights cutting beams through the darkness. The back door flew open, and Dr. Lin hopped out. Dr. Lin, relieved, rushing to Xiaoran's side.
Xiaoran, are you hurt?
Tong Xiaoran, shaking her head, voice wobbling.
I'm okay, just a little bruised. The baby should be safe.
Song Shimo, lowering her into the SUV's seat.
Let's get you to a safe place. No more hospitals that can be infiltrated. I have a private estate outside the city.
Song Daning, forcing a deep breath.
I'm coming too. We can't let her out of our sight again.
Before any argument ensued, Dr. Lin signaled to the driver and they sped away into the night. Seated in the SUV's spacious interior, Xiaoran gazed at the three men who had come to her rescue. Song Shimo, reticent and fiercely protective. Song Daning, anxious and wounded by heartbreak. Dr. Lin, quietly competent, his brow furrowed in concern. Tong Xiaoran, voice soft but earnest.
Thank you, all of you. No matter what happens next, I won't forget this.
Song Daning, turning toward her from the front seat.
We just want you safe.
Song Shimo, exhaling, eyes on her gently.
Everything else can wait.
Dr. Lin, who sat beside her, leaned over to check her pulse. Dr. Lin.
Let's do a full exam at the estate. We'll also arrange a new paternity test. Secretly.
Song Shimo, firmly.
I'll handle security. This time, no interference.
Song Daning.
And if the father turns out to be me, I want to raise the child, with your permission.
Tong Xiaoran, glancing at him, voice steady.
We'll cross that bridge when we reach it. For now, the baby's well-being is priority. Nothing else matters.
A hush fell, and the tension lessened with each mile the SUV placed between them and the city. The sky remained moonlit, with only scattered stars shining as silent witnesses to the swirl of emotions within that vehicle. Deep inside, Xiaoran recognized that regardless of who proved to be the father, her life had forever changed. The Song family's power struggles, the secret attempts on her life, and the illusions created by her vanished second personality all formed a tangled knot. Yet a single hope flickered in her chest, the strength she'd discovered in herself, and the unwavering resolve of those who refused to let her face danger alone. Somewhere far behind them, In the battered estate they'd fled, the unknown man's phone lay buzzing amid shattered glass. No one was there to answer. Another piece of the puzzle, another threat, would soon arise. But for tonight, at least, Xiaoran had escaped, and, with the men by her side, she intended to fight on for the sake of her unborn child. A single pale moon illuminated the winding driveway leading to Song Shimo's private estate, a tranquil countryside mansion far from the city's prying eyes. Crickets droned in the grass, and tall hedgerows swayed in a gentle night breeze. In the distance, towering cypress trees rustled like watchful sentinels. Inside a sprawling guest suite on the mansion's second floor, Tong Xiaoran stood by a window, staring into the dark expanse. The weight of recent days pressed on her: abductions, hidden conspiracies, the uncertain identity of her child's father, and the Song family's relentless conflicts. She caught her reflection in the glass, a young woman on the brink of motherhood, not knowing who would stand by her side when her baby was born. Tong Xiaoran, softly to herself.
We'll get through this. I promised I'd protect you, little one.
A light knock disrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Song Shimo stepping inside, his shoulder heavily bandaged beneath a casual black shirt. Worry lined his features, but so did relief at seeing her safe. Song Shimo, gently.
It's late. Why aren't you resting?
I can't sleep. My mind won't stop racing.
He approached slowly, as if wary of overwhelming her. He reached for her hand, but hesitated.
This estate is well guarded. No one will harm you here, I promise.
I appreciate everything you've done, but this isn't just about safety, Shimo. Even here, the Song family business still looms. Your father, your stepmother, the possibility of more violence. I'm frightened of how far they'll go to seize control, or destroy whoever stands in their way.
A flicker of pain crossed his eyes. He knew exactly how ruthless his family could be.
We'll handle it. Dr. Lean's new test will happen discreetly under conditions I've arranged. The results will be indisputable this time. No more forgeries.
And if it's not yours?
Silence settled between them, heavy and uncertain. Then, to Xiaoran's surprise, Shimo placed his hands gently on her shoulders, as though anchoring her in place.
Even if it's not mine, I'd still choose to stand beside you. But let's not decide yet. Wait for the truth.
For a moment, Xiaoran felt something warm in her chest, relief, or maybe gratitude. Yet she still had no clear answers. Downstairs, a spacious living room had been converted into something akin to a mobile clinic. Dr. Lean unpacked vials, swabs, and advanced testing kits. Song Daning, arms crossed, hovered nearby. Though he'd once threatened Shimo over Xiaoran, an unspoken truce now lingered between the brothers, forged by their shared urgency to end the chaos.
Will you be able to confirm paternity beyond doubt?
Yes. This time we're sending it to an international lab with no ties to the Song family. Somewhere your father's influence can't reach.
Good. Because my mother, she's getting desperate.
He trailed off, guilt tightening his features. It was his mother who had tried manipulating test results in the first place, plotting kidnappings, sowing disarray. Daning despised feeling complicit, even if he'd never explicitly aided her.
I know you care for Xiaoran, but if the father isn't you, can you let go?
I can't imagine that. I already lost her once, the woman I thought was her anyway. But as long as she's safe and happy, I'll respect her wishes.
Dr. Lian nodded, impressed by this maturity. Then he shifted focus to preparing for the new test, mentally reviewing steps to guarantee no tampering, collecting fresh samples from Xiaoran, Shimo, Daning, and possibly even himself, if only to fully close the loop on rumors that he might be the father.
We need to do it soon. Every day we delay, we risk another incident.
Morning arrived, casting warm sunlight across the estate's manicured gardens. The group convened in a private study, a panel-lined room with shelves of old, leather-bound books. Outside, the hum of security drones reminded them how thoroughly Song Shimo had locked down the perimeter. Tong Xiaoran sat in a high-backed chair, looking composed despite the tension thrumming in the air. Song Dunning and Song Shimo stood on either side of the desk, each man alert, protective, but also watchful of the other. Dr. Lin unpacked sterile swabs. Dr. Lin, addressing Xiaoran,
Are you ready? We'll collect samples from you and each potential father.
I'm ready. Let's get it over with.
he took her cheek swab first, sealing it in a labeled container. Next, he turned to Danning, then Shimo. In solemn silence, the men complied, letting Dr. Lin gather their DNA.
I'll have my trusted courier deliver these to an international lab. With express processing, results should be back in 2 days.
At that, a hush settled. 2 days, 48 hours that felt like an eternity. Xiaoran closed her eyes briefly, bracing for the emotional whirlwind to come. That afternoon, Mrs. Song arrived unannounced, her limousine rolling up the driveway. She was not alone. Mr. Song Sr., Shimo's father, and the patriarch stepped out behind her. 2 imposing figures, each bearing the weight of the Song family's name. They were greeted by a cluster of armed guards who refused them entry beyond the estate's main foyer. Mrs. Song, eyes narrowed.
Out of my way. I came to speak to my son.
Guard, standing firm.
Apologies, madam, but Mr. Song Shimo has given strict orders. No one enters without his approval.
Mr. Song Sr., in a raspy growl.
Your so-called master forgets who truly holds power in the Song family.
Despite the patriarch's bluster, the guards held their ground. Tension crackled through the foyer like electricity. At length, a calm voice cut through. Song Shimo strode forward, gaze cold yet polite.
Father, Madam, I wasn't informed of your visit.
Don't pretend ignorance. We both know we came for that girl and her unborn child.
Where is she? Shimo's expression didn't waver. Song Shimo.
She's resting. After the ordeal she's been through, I have no intention of letting her out of my protection.
You think you can hide here forever? The child, if it's yours, will be crucial to the Song legacy. But if it's not, that woman is worthless. Hand her over.
Shimo's jaw clenched. He offered no retort, merely eyeing his father, Mr. Song Sr., advancing despite a limp.
I want to see her now.
Before Shimo could reply, footsteps echoed behind him. Tong Xiaoran appeared, flanked by Song Dunning and Dr. Lin. She paused a short distance away, feeling each pair of eyes lock onto her.
Mr. Song, Mrs. Song.
You dare show yourself?
I have no personal vendetta against you, girl. But the Song family must know who fathered that child. If it's Shimo's, you'll remain under our authority. No more games. If it's Danning's, well, your standing in the family changes drastically. And if the father is outside our bloodline.
He didn't finish the sentence, but the unspoken threat sent a chill through the room.
We've already arranged a second paternity test. This time, no one can tamper with it. In 2 days, we'll all know the truth.
A flicker of alarm crossed Mrs. Song's face. Clearly, she hadn't expected them to act so decisively.
You think that solves everything? We'll have our own test done.
There will be no third test, no stalling. The results we receive in 2 days will be final.
Silence fell. Mr. Song Sr. clenched his cane with trembling hands, aware that Shimo and Danning had outmaneuvered them this time.
2 days, then. But if you think you can keep me from dealing with your mother's actions, you're mistaken. I'm still the patriarch.
Shimo remained silent, not rising to the bait. As the elder pair retreated to their car, the tension in the foyer ebbed, replaced by an uneasy calm. Night fell again, marking the beginning of the 48-hour wait. With guards posted at every entrance, the estate felt like an isolated fortress. Still, the atmosphere inside the house was taut with anticipation. At mealtimes, conversation was subdued. Tong Xiaoran kept mostly to her suite, while Song Danning took long walks through the garden, grappling with memories of the vivacious, reckless version of Xiaoran he'd once known. Song Shimo busied himself coordinating security, making endless phone calls. Dr. Lin checked on Xiaoran multiple times a day, ensuring her health was stable. Late the second evening, a discreet courier arrived. He carried a locked case bearing the foreign lab's seal. Song Shimo and Dr. Lien oversaw the handoff personally in the estate's private study. They locked the door to ensure no one else could enter. Then Dr. Lin carefully opened the case.
The results. Let's gather everyone involved.
Minutes later, the group assembled in the same room where they'd taken the samples. The tension was palpable. Xiaoran stood by the window, eyes drifting between the men, Shimo, Donning, and Dr. Lien, who each wore their own brand of anxiety. Nearby, a subdued hush blanketed the room. Dr. Lien, unfolding the documents,
This is the official untampered result.
each person seemed to hold their breath.
The father of Tong Xiaoran's unborn child is...
His eyes flicked to the page. For an interminable second, no one moved. If you enjoyed this story, please let me know by pressing the like button. Dr. Lien, softly.
Song Shimo.
A hush fell, followed by a collective, shaky exhalation. Song Shimo seemed momentarily stunned, as though he had steeled himself for another outcome. Tong Xiaoran pressed a trembling hand to her mouth, relief and surprise swirling. Song Daning, voice cracking,
It's Shimo's.
A wave of grief and resignation washed over Daning's features. He turned slightly away, trying to mask how hard it hit him. Dr. Lin slipped the folder back into its container, giving the new father and mother a moment of privacy. Song Shimo, quietly approaching Xiaoran.
So it's really mine.
Tong Xiaoran, eyes brimming with tears.
Yes, it is.
Before either could say more, the door burst open, revealing Mr. Song Sr. and Mrs. Song, who had apparently been waiting within the mansion's corridors. Two uniformed security guards were forced aside as they entered. Mrs. Song, face twisting.
What are the results? Is it Shimo's?
Song Daning, turning to glare.
You forced your way in here to ask that?
Mr. Song Sr., impatient.
Answer her now.
Dr. Lin, firmly.
The child is Song Shimo's, a verified result from an international lab with no Song family ties.
Mrs. Song's face drained of all color. The patriarch frowned, though more in annoyance than shock. Mr. Song Sr., with a slow nod.
Then it's settled. The child is a legitimate Song heir, and Miss Tong belongs to us.
He made a move toward Xiaoran, as if to seize her arm. In an instant, Shimo stepped in front of her, gaze steely. Song Shimo, voice low but commanding.
That's enough. I won't let you drag her into any forced arrangement. She stays with me, on her terms.
Mrs. Song's eyes blazed.
Don't forget, the Song family invests millions in shaping its heirs. We'll control the environment, the upbringing. You don't get to close yourself off from us. I won't allow the next Song heir to be born away from the family seat.
Xiaoran stiffened. She knew this was precisely what she feared, a life where she had no say. Her child raised as a corporate pawn.
This child is not a trophy for your power games. I'll never hand them over to be manipulated.
Mrs. Song bristled, but Mr. Song Sr. raised a hand, silencing her. Mr. Song Sr., addressing Shimo directly.
You should remember your place. You're my son, yes, but you exist under my authority, our business empire. You plan to raise that child in secrecy. The board of directors will challenge your inheritance, call for your removal if you disregard family tradition.
Shimo met his father's stare unwaveringly.
Father, I've been preparing for that fight for a long time. If the board wants to replace me, they can try. But if they want the Song group to survive, they'll consider the best interests of the future heir, not some outmoded sense of tradition.
His words cast a hush over the room. The father's eyes flared with indignation, but behind it lurked a grudging respect for Shimo's boldness. Song Daning, suddenly, stepping forward.
He's right. If any part of the Song group tries to harm Xiaoran or the baby, they'll have to answer to me as well.
Mrs. Song pivoted, disbelief etched on her features.
You're siding with your brother now.
Daning inhaled sharply, then exhaled as though casting off a weight.
I've made mistakes, but I won't let you hurt Xiaoran, or my niece or nephew. I'm done being anyone's pawn.
For a moment, the matriarch's composure cracked, revealing genuine fear that she might be losing her grip on Daning.
You ungrateful child!
A taut silence reigned. At last, Mr. Song Sr. turned stiffly and with a curt gesture directed Mrs. Song toward the door.
Let's go. We'll discuss this further at the board meeting. I have no wish to see more families squabbling in public.
Mrs. Song shot a final, venomous glare at Xiaoran, then departed. The door closed behind them. Everyone released a collective breath, as though a storm had passed. Tong Xiaoran's knees felt weak. She sank into a nearby chair. Song Shimo crouched next to her, concern in his gaze.
Are you all right?
I'm relieved, but still worried. Your family's demands won't end here. The board, they'll press you.
He gently took her hand in his own.
Let them. I've been consolidating power in the company for years to prevent precisely this. With Daning's support and enough allies, we can shield you from the worst of it.
At that, Song Daning approached, looking pained yet determined.
Xiaoran, I wanted to say congratulations and...
His voice caught. He swallowed hard.
I'm sorry for all I put you through. I really believed the child might be mine. But it doesn't matter now. I know how to step aside when it means protecting you and the baby.
A flicker of compassion shone in Xiaoran's eyes. She reached out, touching Daning's arm gently.
Thank you. I never wanted to hurt you, Daning. I know you meant well, in your own way.
He mustered a smile that looked more sad than happy.
I'll stand behind both of you. I won't let my mother do anything drastic. That's a promise.
Dr. Lean, who had been quietly observing, cleared his throat.
We should also consider the next step for your health, Xiaoran. The stress you've been under is significant. Let's schedule regular prenatal visits somewhere safe, preferably out of the city's reach.
Song Shimo rose, offering Xiaoran a supportive hand as she got to her feet.
I'll fund a private clinic for her if I have to, whatever it takes.
And I'll oversee it personally if that's what Xiaoran wants.
She studied the three men around her, one a father, one an unrequited protector, and one a steadfast doctor. Months ago, she could never have imagined such a tangled web of connections. Now, she felt a cautious but growing confidence. Several weeks later, the dust began to settle. The songboard, swayed by the promise of a new heir, accepted Shimo's leadership without further revolt, so long as business thrived. Mrs. Song, publicly scolded by Mr. Song Sr. for her reckless methods, withdrew from direct confrontation, though her bitterness simmered beneath the surface. Daning, forging a new identity for himself, enrolled in advanced business courses abroad, partly to escape the oppressive family environment and partly to solidify his own future. At last, Tong Xiaoran, determined to shield her baby from ongoing threats, made a bold decision. She agreed to stay with Song Shimo, but only if they maintained a degree of autonomy. She refused to be a decorative figure in a gilded cage, and Shimo, recognizing her need for independence, promised to grant her the freedom to shape her own life. So, in a quiet ceremony attended only by a few trusted friends and Dr. Lian, who gently teased that the bride's dress should be prenatal friendly, Shimo and Xiaoran exchanged vows under a flowering willow tree in the estate garden. No paparazzi, no corporate media, just two people choosing each other amid the swirling storms of their complicated world. Song Shimo, softly, placing a ring on Xiaoran's finger.
I don't care about formalities or titles. All I want is to protect you and our child.
Tong Xiaoran, eyes glistening.
You've already proven that. I promise to stand beside you, no matter how many trials come our way.
Song Daning, watching from under a white pavilion, accepted his role as a blessing for their union, an act of letting go of the illusions he once clung to. When the ceremony ended, he gave them both a quiet nod, then stepped aside to gaze at the horizon, as if seeing a new future for himself in it. Meanwhile, Dr. Lian fussed over the catering and insisted Xiaoran rest immediately after the brief ceremony. He privately reminded Shimo that pregnant women needed meticulous care, no more reckless standoffs. Dr. Lean, winking,
I trust you'll keep the rescue missions to a minimum now?
Song Shimo, chuckling lightly.
I hope so. I've had more than enough firefights for a lifetime.
In the following months, Xiaoran found a steady rhythm. Each day she woke in a sunlit bedroom, safe under Shimo's protection, but free to wander the gardens or visit the estate's library. She practiced new hobbies, painting small watercolors of flowers and reading up on child development. When her belly grew rounder, Song Shimo hired the best prenatal instructors, ensuring she had everything she needed, from yoga classes to homemade soups by top chefs. Occasionally, she'd glance at the photos left behind by her second personality, those 108 men once tangled in her past. Now, they were just fleeting ghosts of another life. Xiaoran realized she had grown stronger, forging her own identity. She no longer felt overshadowed by that vanished alter ego. Tong Xiaoran, thinking aloud one evening while stroking her belly,
I'm finally living for myself, and for you, my baby.
One evening, as twilight draped the estate in gold, Shimo found her in the orchard, where late summer fruit dangled from branches. She felt his presence before he spoke.
Someday our child will run around here climbing these trees.
Hopefully not too high, I'd worry.
They walked together, hand in hand, along a path flanked by rose bushes. Neither spoke of corporate battles or family feuds. In this quiet moment, it was just two people imagining a future with laughter and children's footsteps in the orchard. When the baby finally arrived on a stormy autumn night, it was not in some grand, sterile hospital. Dr. Lian assisted in a private maternity suite Shimo had custom built on the estate. Outside, thunder rumbled like a distant echo of the turmoil they'd once faced. Inside, Xiaoran's cries and Shimo's calming whispers mingled with the steady beep of monitoring machines. At the end of a long, exhausting labor, the crying of a newborn pierced the air. A tiny, healthy baby girl. The storm outside faded into the hush of dawn as Shimo stood by Xiaoran, gently cradling their daughter.
She's here. Our beautiful little one.
Tong Xiaoran, tears streaking her cheeks, exhausted but elated.
We did it. We really did.
Dr. Lian quietly stepped out to give them privacy, his heart full as he remembered how precarious this journey had been, from kidnappings to conspiracies, from hidden tests to fierce confrontations. Now, all that tension softened, replaced by the gentle wonder of a new life. In the days that followed, word spread within the Song family. A granddaughter had been born to the eldest heir. Some offered guarded congratulations, others seethed with unspoken resentment. But the board couldn't deny that Shimo's power, fortified by public goodwill over the new heir, was unassailable. Mrs. Song, though outwardly silent, retreated to her own opulent quarters. The patriarch, Mr. Song Sr., grudgingly acknowledged the baby's position in the lineage. Yet these distant echoes never breached the quiet warmth of the mansion's nursery. There, in a soft glow of lamplight, Xiaoran and Shimo took turns rocking their newborn, hearts full of hope rather than fear. Song Shimo, whispering to the baby,
Nothing will harm you. Your mom and I promise.
Tong Xiaoran smiling tenderly.
Welcome to the world, little one. Free from all the chaos that brought us here.
No matter what storms the future might hold, this child symbolized not just a new heir, but a fresh beginning, an untainted promise that love, courage, and unity could triumph over the most ruthless of power struggles. If you enjoyed this story, there's another video on screen right now. Go ahead and give it a look for an even more astonishing tale. And don't forget, we'll have many more uplifting and dramatic stories coming your way, so make sure you subscribe to our channel. That way, you'll never miss our newest uploads.